If you have seen my theory, fast forward to 5:15 for more evidence that our consciousness is connected to the Earth's magnetic field. The true cause of the magnetic field is SpaceX and CERN shooting magnetic frequencies at Earth's magnetic field. In the documentary on the holographic universe on YouTube, which is a good watch, and I will put the link in the description box. The experiment strongly shows what we believe to be solid mass out there is not solid all the time. The two-slit experiment shows if something is not observed by one of the five senses, it's not solid. Instead, it is a wave of possibilities. In the documentary, you keep hearing the doctors and professors of physics keep saying there is no out there. Meaning there is no chair that you are sat on, and there is no computer that you are watching this on. It's all a frequency that your five senses pick up, which is just electrical signals to the brain, giving you this reality that you're experiencing. Basically, we could be a brain in a box with 5 wires going to the brain that gives us this reality that we are experiencing. There is something else that the doctors and professors of physics keep saying, and that is the brain downloads the frequency from the frequency domain. They also believe this is where the consciousness comes from. A frequency domain, but they never say where the frequency domain is. But I know where the frequency domain is from putting pieces of the puzzle together. In the experiment showing Waterhole's memory, a listening device was used to record the electromagnetic field coming from the water to later reconstruct the DNA that was once in the water from the recording. This told me magnetic fields holds memory. So that got me thinking, could this magnetic field hold memory, and could it be the source of the frequency from the frequency domain? I got my answer seeing what looked like magnetic frequencies shooting off SpaceX rockets at Earth's magnetic field. Let's take a quick look at this being done.
Absolutely amazing, and to describe it to you from, I mean, you can see it, but from the ground, it almost looks as though a cloud of smoke with its own mind is just shooting through the sky. This is absolutely incredible. Again, you're watching the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Then spiral shooting off the rockets. There's a good possibility that there could be magnetic frequencies of information created by powerful magnets being turned on in a positive and negative state, the same way a computer stores data. Yes, they do say at the very basis of our reality, they are seeing computer code in strings of bits of ones and zeros. And these magnetic frequencies of information is embedded into Earth's magnetic field, and that is what is causing the Mandela effect. Next, I'm going to show you evidence that the Earth's magnetic field is the source of our consciousness and the frequency domain. And a good reason for getting us all to separate which the virus, that is the common cold, has done.
A question tonight, can you actually measure the emotional outpouring in a worldwide crisis?
Sometimes scientists think that they have done just that. Their machines and computers found a bizarre pattern right after several global disasters.
Most people have heard of the random number generator studies through the Global Consciousness Project.
Because there is this resonant effect through the force, if you want to look at it that way, through this entangled, interwoven consciousness field.
Emotional focus of millions of people on a single event like 9/11 may form a global consciousness.
We are consciousness, infinite awareness, having an experience. And that consciousness can be as vast as or as tiny as we can be manipulated.
They knew the science of consciousness is real.
Does consciousness interact directly with the physical world?
To answer that question, Dr. Nelson and his colleagues deployed dozens of instruments around the world, random number generators.
And then on 9/11, it begins not being a drunkard's walk. It goes like this for 2 days.
It may sound bizarre, but Dr. Nelson and his team have been at this for the better part of a decade. The first spike showed up in 1997 with the death of Princess Diana. Other events like the Concorde crash, the Madrid train bombing, and the Pope's funeral all registered on those random number generators. But early on the morning of September 11th, the data went off the charts.
In the 1990s, Roger Nelson at Princeton got the idea that maybe intention was only a piece of the puzzle and maybe attention was also important. That the act of attending, which we think of internally, attending is a kind of coherent mental state. You're focusing in on one thing. And if we can think of that as not simply being in your head but being out there as well, then when you attend to something, it changes. And it changes in the direction of coherence. So if the target of your attention is randomness, then a cohered random system is, by definition, more orderly, becomes ordered.
Today, there are over 60 random event generators placed around the world. The numbers that come into the generators during normal random events for global consciousness are just that.
There's nothing there.
Jeff Scargill, a research astrophysicist with NASA, admires the team's use of scientific method, but questions its results.
It's finding patterns in random data. The nature of randomness is that any pattern that you want to choose ahead of time will eventually show up, and just as an accident.
It could happen by chance, but the chance is like 1 in a million or 1 in some really large number.
How does it work, and what does it all mean? Even the scientists don't know. The implications go beyond science into philosophy and religion. All we know is this: at this very moment, around the globe, the random number generators keep flipping those virtual coins, waiting to record our collective reaction to the next major world event.
In 1997, I started doing something which turned into what we now call the Global Consciousness Project, which is looking at the entire world in a way, using the same kind of technology we developed in the lab.
So he started doing experiments where he'd take a random number generator, an electronic circuit, and put it in the vicinity of a group that was meditating, thinking that this would create a large amount of coherent attention. Sometimes people knew the random generator was there, and sometimes they didn't know. And he wanted to see whether the randomness would become orderly during the meditation. And after hundreds of such tests by Roger and me and a bunch of our colleagues, we came to the conclusion that it does become less random in a context where we can infer that there's mental coherence going on, sometimes due only to attention. On September 11th, a few hours before the first plane struck, this network of random number generators became more coherent.
less random and more coherent.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. Huge.
In the case of the September 11th World Trade Center attacks in New York, the REGs measured a warning spike 4 hours in advance of the first plane strike and continued measuring the ensuing events and public reactions. Deep feelings of compassion enveloped the world, and a 50-hour trend ensued in the data, reflecting the profound effects of the event itself.
After 9/11, working with Princeton University and some other researchers, what they began to find is that there was a large spike in the magnetic fields of the Earth during 9/11 that is now attributed to the mass collective outpouring of heart-based emotion from hundreds of millions of people who witnessed the tragedy. There are 2 satellites over the northern hemisphere. Every 30 minutes they send back a signal telling scientists how strong this magnetic field of the Earth is. It's important because all life is connected to it. There is no them and us when it comes to the magnetic field of every CEO of every corporation, every leader of every nation, every blade of grass, every hamster, every goldfish, every human is linked to this field. So what happens, the field is important. And what scientists found is 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15 minutes after the first plane hit the first tower, there was a very unusual spike in the strength of the magnetic fields of the Earth attributed to the collective outpouring of human emotion, heart-based emotion, the strongest magnetic generator in the body.
Several hours in advance of a major world event, non-random, coherent numbers are present. A large spike in the data waveform appears, giving a precognition that a major event is about to occur.
I mean, it all devolves back into the question, what is the role of mind in the physical world? From a Western science point of view, there isn't much. I mean, I as a designer of a car, can get an internal image and an intention to build a car, and eventually a car appears. But that's not a direct link. It requires a lot of work between the intention and the building of a car. But this question is saying more that, is there a direct link between one's intention and the behavior of the world? But an unmediated link, or if mediated, we don't know by what yet.
For half a century, Yitzhak Rabin risked his life to defend his country. Today, he gave his life to bring it a lasting peace.
Hours before the November 4th, 1995 assassination of Nobel Peace Prize winner, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, a continuous running REG saw a major spike developing, which peaked at the time of his murder, reflecting the loss of a true peacemaker and a man of compassion.
The question is, can you create that effect without having a tragedy? Can you create it at will? And this has led the Institute of HeartMath to create a project that is called Global Coherence Initiative. Personal coherence is good, global coherence is really good.
If you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-sized understanding. When you look out, a golf ball-sized awareness. And when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball-sized wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness. And when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter.
On a graph, these phenomena show up as spikes, such as this one. And here is where this all gets very interesting. The date of this spike is September 11th, 2001. Just a coincidence? Well, how about this spike?
Oh my God!
December 26th, 2005. Or this one. April 8th, 2006. In all, dozens of world events, according to project scientists, are linked to the random number generators acting in a very unrandom-like way.
The deepest mystery we can explore is the mystery of consciousness. Do our thoughts and feelings begin and end in our brain? Or are they part of a larger tapestry, one that connects us to everyone and everything in ways we are just beginning to understand?
They're able to actually, for the first time, they're able to actually observe the human relationship between the magnetic fields of the Earth and when we're influencing those fields in very specific ways. Then they went back and looked at the data and said, does this only happen when bad things are present? And the answer was no. Super Bowl Sunday, the whole world is watching, and it's influencing the magnetic fields of the Earth. The funeral of Princess Diana, the whole world came together.
The September 6, 1997 funeral of Princess Diana yielded a major signal in the data. Global compassion following tragedy of major world figures or world loss of life yielded the strongest spikes in the data.
If something like Princess Diana's funeral was bringing 2 billion people to think about the same thing and maybe feel sadness or compassion together, that we should try to see whether our machines, our random event generators, could detect that, could react to it. So in that particular case, I asked all of my colleagues and friends who did the same kind of research, please take data. We had several lines of data in Europe, several lines of data in this country, put them all together, and remarkably enough, or maybe not so surprising if you believe the data from the laboratory experiments, we have a big, strong effect. If you did the same thing 100 times, you wouldn't see the size of change in our REG devices that we saw during the time of the funeral of Princess Diana.
We later had another instance where Princess Diana was killed in a car crash, and her funeral was scheduled a week in advance. So we figured we can use that as another example of lots of attention around the world for one event. And we got, I think, 12 of us around the world got our random number generators going, and we analyzed the result, and again, was significant deviation from randomness towards order during the period of the funeral, when lots of people were watching. And we thought, well, this is great. This is an interesting experiment, but we had to go through a lot of work to get everybody to participate at the same time.
I think you get the idea now how important this magnetic field is to our consciousness. So seeing this,
absolutely amazing, and to describe it to you from, I mean, you can see it, but from the ground it almost looks as though a cloud of smoke with its own mind is just shooting through the sky. This is absolutely incredible. Again, you're watching the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base.
question needs asking, and more talk on what is being seen and what could be the dangers, if any. The Earth's magnetic field is everyone's consciousness. Messing with it is messing with your memories. And what is separating us with this fake virus doing to the collective consciousness? What I say is scientifically possible, but most of all, I now know how important the Earth's magnetic field is to us all. Okay, that's all for this vid, but I would like to say that it takes a lot of time and effort to research and create this video to bring you the information. So if you think it's good info and would like to show your appreciation by donating, my PayPal will be in the description box. I have no income at the moment, so your help will be most appreciated. So please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.